sunlight, or rock. In Mayor Colony, Erno lived in the Hotel Gijon on Calviernes, in a 2 by 3 meter room barely high enough for him to stand up in. The room contained a gel mattress, a false window, and 1,000 bugs. He assumed that anything he said or did in the hotel was being recorded for later perusal, but in fact Erno could not imagine why anyone would care what any of the residents of Calviernes did. Most likely, the bugs were the remnants of some jackleg enterprise that had failed. Some would-be entrepreneur had seeded self-replicating monitors throughout the colony, hoping to sell the spy service, or the idea of the spy service, or protection against the spy service. The thing had fallen through, and now, unless you lived in the park and could afford scrubbers, you dealt with the bugs. Erno sat up on the edge of the gel mat, cross-legged, trying to get himself moving. Too much wine last night. He stared out the window at an earth landscape, sunrise over forested mountains, pink and blue sky with streaks of white cloud. River in the valley catching silver fire from the sun. In the distance, an eagle circled above the cliffs. Erno took a deep breath of Mayer's slightly sour air and relaxed the muscles in his back and shoulders. The eagle froze dead in mid-glide, the foliage in the trees stopped moving, then the bird jumped back and repeated its swoop, a glitch in the ancient image generator. Erno had been watching this stuttering eagle for 6 months now. After 10 minutes, he stretched to his feet, shook the bugs from his arms and legs, applied probiotics to his groin and armpits, and drew on his stiff overalls. He drank the ounce of water left in the bulb by his bed and ate the leftover soy cake from last night. Outside his room, he ran into Alwa Royther, who lived in the next room. Alwa, about to scuttle through his door, raised his left arm in greeting. It looked completely normal. The last time Erno had seen him, Alwa had sported a glittering metal hand with 6 digits and a special manipulator. "New hand?" Erno asked. "The newest," said Alwa. He swiveled the hand 360 degrees and extended his index finger 20 centimeters. The fact that the hand looked like flesh rather than a machine was unsettling. "Watch," he said. Alwa touched his finger to the dim light fixture in the ceiling, and the light brightened. "Nice," Erno said, completely repulsed. Alwa had replaced much of his body with obsolete devices. His eyes were multifaceted lenses. His left arm was made of pink pseudo-flesh over a titanium armature, and servos in his legs clicked as he walked. The fingers of his flesh hand were stained yellow from the cigarettes that he smoked, imported from Clavius. His shabby blue suit, worn at the elbows, reeked of stale smoke, and every night Erno could hear him coughing through the thin wall that separated their rooms, and some of the other residents claimed that Alwa had done hard time in Shackleton, others that he had a fortune stashed away in some secret account. Erno doubted it. Alwa shrank his finger and held his hand out for Erno to shake. Erno hesitated, then took it. The hand felt like warm flesh. Alwa grinned fiercely and would not let go. "Look," he said. When Erno looked down at their grasped hands, he saw that Alwa's little finger bore a silver ring. The same ring that Erno wore on his own pinky. Startled, he let go of Alwa's hand, and the ring on Alwa's finger gradually subsided into the flesh. Erno touched the ring on his own finger. It was the only thing he had from his mother. He always wore it turned around so that the turquoise stone sat toward his palm, making it look like a plain silver band. Less chance for the inhabitants of Calviernes to notice he had anything of value. "Perfect mimicry," Alwa said. As abruptly as he had engaged Erno, he turned and placed the new hand against his door plate. The door flipped open, and Alwa hurried through into his room. Alwa was only one of the eccentrics who lived in the hotel. On the other side of Erno lived Brian, an evolved dog who worked as a bonded messenger. One floor down the narrow stairs lived a couple of dwarfs who went by the names of Tessa and Therese, each one only a meter tall. At first, Erno thought their stature was a freak of nature, until the concierge told him they were an abandoned genetic mod that had been tried at Tycho, engineered at half size to reduce the load on resources. But the mod never caught on, and Tessa and Therese were left to live in a world of giants. They earned their living selling pornographic vids that they produced somewhere in the E-swamp at the north end of the colony. Erno bought one and found it pretty hot. On disc, they had the ability to convey by expression and pose the desperate need to have a penis inserted somewhere, anywhere, into their bodies, immediately. Nothing strange about that. What was strange was to see that ability translated into money, something that he had heard about back home but never understood. Now, alone in a place where these sexual rules were all upside down, he understood it better. He was ashamed to admit how easily he had become a consumer. The concierge was already at her desk when he hit the lobby. "Good morning, Mr. Pamson," she said. "Your rent is due." "Tonight, Anna," Erno said. "I promise." "I promise, too. I promise if your door won't open tonight, I will not open it for you." "I don't promise unless I mean it," Erno said. Claro, the deadly Mr. P. He could not pay the rent. Annadem Bennett had loaned him cash for 2 weeks now. Perhaps it was that he was an immigrant from the Society of Cousins, and she liked quizzing him about life in what she persisted in thinking was a dictatorship of women. The first time she had seen his penis, she'd asked him why it wasn't bigger. She had the idea that Erno had been born into a male harem, genetically engineered to give sexual pleasure. Erno's descriptions of everyday life among the cousins only disappointed her. Cousins are a gender-differentiated anarcho-social democracy, he insisted, not a role-reversed sexual tyranny. The founders were women and men. First Chair Nora Sobieski said, "So why were you exiled?" I made a mistake. Because of it, someone died." Ah. It was the only time he had ever impressed her. The deadly Mr. P. Maybe that was why she had let him ride so long. Annadem claimed she came from one of the wealthiest families on the moon, graced with prenatal mods that gave her lightning intellect and cat-like balance. It was only through an unlikely series of investment reverses and the malice of her great-aunt Amelia, Annadem allowed that she had come to manage the Hotel Gijon. Erno found the story hard to reconcile with her lank hair and spotty skin. And as for preternatural balance, the only evidence Erno had seen of that was when she dodged out the back of the lobby whenever Felix Menas came down Calviernes looking for her. Erno headed up the boulevard. The Mayer lavitube had been sealed with foamed basalt when it was pressurized 70 years earlier and painted with white titanium dioxide. But where Erno lived, the last paint upgrade had to have been 30 years before, and the alleys were draped in shadows. Calviernes, along with Cal's Sabano and Domingo, was one of these short side streets. Hotel Gijon stood at the street's far end. One wall of the building was constructed of the face of the lavitube. Across Calviernes were another flophouse and an RIOP rental shop. Next to it, a loan shark and a gambling arcade and on the corner, the Café Royale. As the boulevard wound its way through the heart of the lava tube, in places it broke into a flight of broad steps or ramps to negotiate rises or falls in the natural floor that the colony designers had deliberately retained. That, and the fact that the older buildings were decorated with red, blue, and yellow ceramic tiles, gave the place its old European look. The vistas were broken by the curve of the gray stucco buildings. Above, from the bright roof with its nest of catwalks, heliotropes fed sunlight down. From the roof of the hotel, you could see a considerable way down the tube through hazy, high CO2 air until it twisted away, a 10-kilometer long city stretched inside the hollow snakeskin that ancient lunar volcanism had discarded several billion years ago. The first place Erno had gone after he had been exiled from the Society of Cousins had been the scientific station at Sander, but all they had there was a battery of radio and gamma-ray telescopes and a crew of Aspergered scientists. There was no work for an undocumented 18-year-old biotech apprentice. But he accessed the lunar labor market and managed to snag a job with Dendronics Limited in Mayer, in the lunar Carpathians. Erno had heard little about Mayer among the cousins. Founded by the EU in 2046, the colony had been taken over by free marketers in the lawyer's coup of 2073. Here, Erno's lack of a citizenship wasn't a problem. When the economy was humming, immigrants like him kept labor costs down. He busied himself as an assistant on a project for adding prion linkages to human growth hormone. It was mindless work, and he wondered why Dendronics was even interested in it, since HGH was a glut on the market and medically questionable anyway. 3 months into his job, he found out why when it was revealed that Dendronics was a shell corporation for an AI pyramid. In the ensuing market panic, 16 associated corporations failed, and Erno was on the street. With the financial chaos, work became scarce. The railgun was still in operation, sending satellites to low Earth orbit. The only other jobs there were in a factory producing Cermet building struts and in colony services. So, every day, Erno would go to the labor pool and sit in the waiting room with dozens of others hoping to be hired for day work. Since Erno had no membership in the colony corporation, he was paid in cash, 1 ducat a day. The labor pool took 20% off the top. He kept the remainder on his bracelet, bought protein bars, and, when he could afford it, an apple or two, in the shop at the end of Cal Sabato. Tony, the shop owner, pestered Erno about sex among the cousins. Did Erno miss the sex with his sisters? I didn't have sex with my sisters, Erno told him. Why not? Were they ugly? Cousins don't have sex with relatives. You can tell me the truth. I'm no bigot like these others. Trust me, we don't. I mean, there's no actual law against it, but cultural imperatives don't need to be codified in law. The Society of Cousins isn't just about sex, it's a matter of, sure, cuz, you need to buy something or get out. How about a lotto ticket? Tony earned more by selling lottery tickets than fruit or anti-senescence. The front of his shop was a big screen monitoring the latest winners. The residents of the weekend would cycle through the remote celebrity cams. Balls Hakem, Solfon Seba Bridewell, Yoon Yamada. Watch him move into his new luxury condo in the park. Go shopping with her for clothes. See them have sex with famous people. Everyone talked about the winners with a mixture of envy and pride, as if they were relatives. Felix even claimed to be related to Gudrun Colt, who had won the jackpot 3 years ago. But if he was, why was he living in the weekend? From inside the shop, Tony could watch the passers-by stop and stare at the screen, and he would make vicious fun of them, their bovine faces, their fantasies. Two kinds of tramps, you'd say, holding up one finger. The unfettered free spirit, ultimate individual, self-reliant, not owned by anyone. He held up a second finger. Then you've got the broken parasite feeding on the labors of good citizens, a beggar and prostitute, thief and hustler, social deviant who must be controlled, limited, quarantined. Freeze them all and forget the defrost. Erno wondered what kind of tramp Tony considered Erno to be. He had a lot of time to think about it, because mostly he had no work. He was what they called poor. All the people living in Weekend were poor, even the shop owners that the other hotel residents spoke of with envy. Tony had stacks of cash, they told him, hidden away. Erno did not know what to believe. Mostly, being poor was a matter of finding enough to eat and to pay the rent, and then sitting around with nothing to do and not much energy to do it. Poverty was boring. Even though Erno had spent most of his adolescence feeling ignored and underutilized, he had never felt this useless. He sat in the labor pool all morning and the Café Royal all afternoon.